Hi, my name is Machinehead, and this is Understanding Fortnite. Today, I wanted to talk about mechanical practice and some practice habits that can really speed up your process of getting better mechanics. Before that, I just want to talk about the actual science behind this. All your mechanics are stored in the implicit memory, or at least should be stored in the implicit memory. The implicit memory is similar to what people call the muscle memory. This is basically your memory that stores all of your tasks that are meant to be automatic. The best example would just be walking. You do not have to think about walking at all, or at least I hope you don't. This is where you want all your mechanical skills to be. You want them to be automatic and you don't want to have to think about them. When you first start learning a skill, it's actually stored in your conscious memory or your working memory. Now this memory is not as good because you can only really think about a few things at once before you start to really get overloaded. And something I noticed that happens to a lot of people, they get their mechanics to a certain level and then they just stop. And their main complaint is that they black out in fights or they panic in fights. So the reason this might be happening is because your mechanics are still being partially performed by the working memory. And the problem with this is it means that your mechanics still require a certain amount of conscious focus. All your focus is going to be divided in half because half of your working memory is still going to be focusing on your mechanics. Even though you may have looked at all this stuff before and you may actually know exactly what you need to do, but in the moment of the fight, you just couldn't make it happen. So that's why I think mechanics are still the most important thing. So these habits that I'm about to show you are basically just meant to make your mechanics automatic as fast as possible. First thing you need to do is to stop timing yourself. I see a lot of people that come to me, they show me their practice routine. It's always divided 30 minutes of kovacs, 30 minutes of free building, and then 30 minutes of box fights. So with box fights or games, there isn't really a lot of goals you can set. So I think it's okay to practice those for a certain amount of time. If you're practicing specific skills, what I recommend you do is actually practice in sets and reps and forcing yourself to go for a certain number of perfect reps before you can continue on to the next build. If you're trying a very specific mechanic and you're trying to do 15 in a row perfectly, when you get to the 10th one, you actually start to have a little bit of pressure on yourself because you don't really want to spend all day on the same move. When you force yourself to do it perfectly like that, you actually start focusing on what you're doing. If you say to just practice something for a certain amount of time, then doing perfect reps is not really a focus anymore. Then really your only focus becomes the clock, because when the clock's over, then you get to stop practicing and do actual fun stuff. The next thing you should do is map out your builds, figure out your snap points, and set rules for the timing of certain parts of the builds. So what I mean by mapping out your builds and your snap points is basically figuring out where the most consistent place your crosshair has to be to make all your builds to go. So let's say if you're doing a straight tunnel like this, for this kind of tunnel, I find the best snap points are here, and specifically aiming at these two spots right here and here. So if I had a floor here, and I was just looking to the side to place my walls, then it would be connecting over here. And this is a very common situation in endgames. There's usually always something beside you, so you have to make sure that you're using the correct snap points. That's why you should always find the most consistent snap point to get your build to snap to. So the next thing you should do is set rules for yourself for the timing of certain things. So let's say I was going up this ramp and I wanted to place a cone floor at the top. So first of all, I can't be looking this way. It's going to go to the closest snap point to my crosshair, which is actually below this ramp. So I have to be looking up. Then you actually have to figure out where your character actually has to be to make that snap point happen. So if I was making a rule for myself to get this to place consistently, I would say that I'm past the line of the first ramp. I must be past that line before I can start building my floor. Now this does not apply for the cone. The cone for some reason likes to place much further out. I can actually place the cone a lot earlier than the floor. So the timing for this would be place the cone whenever and then wait until I get past this point to place the floor. It seems like an extremely simple build. When I was first starting, this is the way that I mapped everything out and tried to get my snap points as clean as possible. Now, an easy way to slow down and break down editing is actually a trick I learned from Raider, which is timing your edit and then your select. So you want to time it so that as soon as you enter your edit menu, you're already selecting the tile. And that's going to make your edits much faster. And then the second step would obviously be doing the actual motion after. This is great because it allows you to actually start building a lot of speed early on without actually worrying about the end timing. Because what scuffs a lot of people is they'll start doing the edit, but then they'll confirm too fast. So they will get to this point and then they'll confirm and the edit actually doesn't happen. And this is just from going too fast, or your mouse speed is just not consistent yet for your edits. I really like this method by Raider to actually start building some speed. And then the next thing you can start doing is you can get this thing down. You can actually take a second to time the menu for the next edit. If you're using release, you just release. If you're using double blinds like me, then you just confirm and you just practice selecting your next edit as soon as you confirm your previous edit, like this. Okay, the next thing is self-correction. So basically by self-correction, what I mean is every time you make an error in your build, make sure that you're constantly telling yourself, what that error was. If you don't know why an error is happening in a build, then you probably need to go back and remap it and figure out how to make that more consistent. Literally every single mechanical mistake, you should just right away know the solution, what you did wrong, and why that mechanic didn't work. If you have a mistake that keeps happening and you don't say anything to yourself about it, there's no way that you can improve on that mechanic. Just raw reps of something aren't enough. They need to be perfect, and you need to self-correct. If you don't do this, your mechanics probably are going to get fast at some point, but they're going to be super inconsistent. The last thing is to always have a full inventory and always be cycling through your builds. Something I noticed really early on when I was practicing editing, as soon as I was done my focused editing practice and I would go back to normal building, I would have to actually shift my hand. So basically what I was doing is I was putting my hand in the most optimal position to press those editing binds, but that was not the optimal position for the rest of my binds. So you have to make sure that when you're editing, you're actually cycling through everything and you're not putting your hand in positions like that. Same thing with all of my aim practice courses. I always have just like random items you can throw in there to fill up your inventory. And it also goes back to the point before this of just like spend your time doing something. Every time I finish doing like a set of builds to sky limit, as I'm falling, I'm just practicing cycling through builds. So yeah, that's everything for this video. Thanks guys.